Hello everyone, my name is The Ultimate Spy, and welcome to another episode of Reviewed number 194. And today, I'm going to be reviewing Alice in Wonderland, the 2010 remake of the original 1951 animated classic. So, what did I think of Alice in Wonderland from 2010? I loved it. Oh my god, I haven't seen it in a long time. I mentioned that in the last episode, how it's been a long time since I've seen the new one, the one that came out at the beginning of the last decade, and it's a very different film. I mean, it is meant to be a remake, but very differently. Like, they do so much more to it than you think, and there are quite a few things they changed with this remake that the other ones after that did not do. I'll get to more of that later on in this review, but first off, like many other remakes that Disney has done of their classic films, this one added to it. Unlike the original, this one actually adds some of Alice's family, like her father, who, when I first saw the movie after all this time, I thought he was being played by Russell Crowe. It's not the case. He's played by the same actor who played Lord Celeborn in The Lord of the Rings. Specifically, the first one, Fellowship of the Ring, and the third one, Return of the King. He's an incredible actor, and he looks very similar to Russell Crowe. I would understand why I would think that, because of their very similar facial structure, but they're very different actors. One is actually New Zealand, although he plays a lot of his roles with a British accent. That's probably why he sound like that. But he only appears in the opening with young Alice, and my goodness, young Alice is so cute. Like, she is adorable. She fits the bill perfectly too. Like, I know that in the original film, at least the one I'm familiar with, and a lot of other people are familiar with, is the one by Walt Disney. That one has her, you know, with straight blonde hair and a dress, and this one, much like her adult self, is different. You know, it's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. You know, the dress is still very cute and still very beautiful, but her hair is different too. Like, she doesn't have the bow. Her hair is actually kind of curly, actually. It's not like it is in the original film. Although it's still blonde, it's just curly, which is not like the original film at all. In fact, the actress who plays young Alice in the very brief amount of time that she's in the film, she's actually Scottish. And not only that, but she also does not have blonde hair. So they had to dye her hair, and it looks natural, but like it's all dyed. And she does play a character with a British accent. A lot of actors do that. In fact, a lot of the actors that you see in this movie are not actually British. Some of them are, but not all of them. A lot of them play their character with a British accent, but they're not actually British, which is really cool because like because this is Disney, and you know Disney's an American company, but obviously Alice in Wonderland is a British story, so that's kind of the idea of it. Kind of like how the original version of the film, it was a lot of American actors in it, but that's because back then it was, you know, they had a lot of American actors in the film playing the part. But this film is very different. But I really liked young Alice. She is adorable, like I've said before, but like, it's just incredible. Like, they really captured her really, really well. She didn't have a lot of dialogue at all, really only in the beginning, and after that it was all about 19-year-old Alice, but like, with the time that she was in there, she was in a few scenes, and they were incredible. Again, I'll go to that later, but like, yeah, still, really, really liked her in the film. And one of the other things that I really, really liked it is just like, it makes the film feel alive. I mean, that's what scores are about, but the score was incredible. It was absolutely beautiful. As I've been listening to it over and over again, I've realized it doesn't really work with the tone of the film. Like, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like the soundtrack of the film doesn't really live up to what's actually happening in the film. I mean, it does, but like, at the same time, I feel like there's a lot more fantasy elements in the score than the movie actually has. I don't know, I kind of feel like the movie and the score don't really match up all the time. I mean, not all the time, but you know, most of the time it does. But like, I just feel like I almost feel like the score belongs in a different fantasy film, like a very, very incredible fantasy film. I don't know where I've seen this kind of film before, but like, I swear, when listening to this soundtrack, it reminds me of another fantasy film. I don't know. I mean, multiple ones out there that I could think of, probably like, Harry Potter, The Lord of the Rings, Narnia. I don't know, actually, though. I really don't know. Like, there's tons of fantasy films that could fit the bill for the soundtrack. I'm not saying that the soundtrack sucks. It's amazing, but like, I just feel like the tone of the film didn't really quite line up with what the soundtrack was giving us in terms of the kind of, I don't know, the types of instruments involved, I guess. The way that the score was composed, and by the way, this score was composed by Danny Elfman. He's an incredible music composer, and he also did the music for the Spider-Man trilogy as well as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is also a film directed by Tim Burton. That's why you hear that same kind of, not the same, music, but like the same style of music, which is incredible. I thought the soundtrack was just so mesmerizing and magical and just whimsical and wonderful. It's so beautiful and so well performed and so just, it really is magical listening to it. It's like, oh my god, I don't know what it reminds me of, but like, there's some movie out there that I've seen in the past that reminds me of this score. I don't know where it was. I don't know where it's from, but God, good grief, I know it's from somewhere. Maybe Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but probably not. I don't know. It's one of those films out there that I'm thinking of. Maybe Narnia. I have no idea. I can't remember, but the moment I remember the film I'm talking about, I'll be so happy. But yeah, for this one, he did an incredible job in building the score. It's truly amazing, and that's probably one of the best parts of this film, honestly, is the score, for sure. Now, this is technically the second time a classic Walt Disney animated film has been remade for modern audiences, because if you count the 101 Dalmatians films, 101 Dalmatians and 102 Dalmatians, they came out in the 90s and early 2000s, specifically, I think it was 1996 and then 2000. Those are the 2 years. I think so. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure. But like, there weren't consistent releases until the 2010s. Like, that era, the one we just closed, was the most consistent year for live action remakes, for sure. Because I know before that we got Jungle Book in the 90s. Like, this past decade, Alice in Wonderland marked the first decade where live action remakes were like happening quite frequently. Like, every few years it happened. Alice in Wonderland, Cinderella, Jungle Book, Through the Looking Glass, Beauty and the Beast, Dumbo, Aladdin, Lion King, Maleficent. All those movies were all, based off of original animated classics. But it's still technically the first remake in the, the newer decade, like the more modern decade. Oh, the 2000s was a modern decade, but like 2010s was a newer decade than the last one, so like, it's just more recent, but like, still, technically it's the second, but like, if you really think about it from a decade standpoint, it's technically the first live action remake we've gotten. But there's still been a few in the past. And like I was talking about how young Alice's dress was absolutely beautiful, I also think that the dress worn by adult Alice is beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love it. Everything about it is great. Young Alice's dress is really, really nice and everything. It's obviously a much more modernized version of the original 1951 dress that she wore. The one that I said that lets her float. It's like a little parachute. But again, that's the fashion back in Victorian times. But the one that Alice wears as her 19-year-old self, that one is equally gorgeous. It is so beautiful. It's honestly a great dress. Also, White Queen dress is amazing too. She's a character in this version of the film, but she's obviously more like the original stories. And she's played by Anne Hathaway, and she is gorgeous. Her dress is very pretty, very much like something that a princess would wear. Like, it's incredible. It's absolutely stunning on her. But yeah, I really like the costumes in this, especially the dresses. Like, top notch. And when Alice gets to Wonderland, it's actually called Wonderland, but she misheard it as Wonderland when she was a little girl. Her and Tweedledee and Tweedledum go to this, come to the stump essentially, and it has the words Snud and Queese on it, which are coincidentally the same amount of letters as the words Disneyland. It's not a reference, obviously, but it's a coincidence, and it's kind of like, it's just an interesting detail. It's like, if you really think about it, those two words have enough letters in them that they can spell Disneyland. I mean, it's not the same thing, but it's just like, it's something I didn't really think about. Like, I paused the movie, I'm like, oh, you know what's so interesting about that? They have the same amount of lettering as the letters from Disneyland. That's like really cool. I didn't really think about it until I actually, paused the movie and really thought about, like, wow, it's It's quite the coincidence, a nice little detail. But in actuality, there are actual landmarks in Underland. They actually represent actual places in Underland, but just for me, as a person who sees all the detail in films, it was just like a really cool little detail that I'm like, oh, that's an interesting coincidence. And while the Queen of Hearts is absent in the film, because this film is more of a sequel to the original story and less on the original actual film, it's inspired by it, but it's not exactly the same. But the Red Queen, who is an original character in the original Alice story, does have similarities to the Queen of Hearts. They both have a theme for hearts, like that's the theme around them, but they are very different characters. I looked it up and apparently they are very different characters, although, again, the theming around hearts is very similar, but again, they are very different. Also for the film, Helena Bonham Carter, who plays the Red Queen, like, her head was, like, digitally enlarged. It was just weird. Like, it doesn't look right, but at the same time, yeah, that it's a thing. And the Knave of Hearts, who's like the right-hand man to the Red Queen, his eye patch seems to change color for some reason. Like, it goes from black to red. It might be a continuity error, but I don't know about that. But it could actually be the fact that he actually leaves the Red Queen's castle. But I'm not sure exactly, because again, you know, when he's near her, he has the red eye patch, but when he's not near her, I don't know. It's a very confusing trait for the Knave of Hearts. Plus, you know, the Knave of Hearts played by Crispin Glover. He obviously talks with a British accent, but I just did not like what they did with the digital technology and the CGI for Crispin Glover's character. I just did not like it at all. It just kind of felt like he was floating, because he was a lot taller than he actually is in real life. Same thing with Matt Lucas. You know, Matt Lucas plays both Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and the face is like, it's basically like his face is superimposed on these CGI bodies, and it does not look right. I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm just like, it doesn't look right. It's weird. You know, it's actually kind of uncomfortable looking at it. It's like, ugh. You know, it's like, yeah, I did not like that part. Definitely did not like that part. And with Anne Hathaway's White Queen, she's obviously a very beautiful queen. Far superior to the Red Queen, because she doesn't have any much excessive makeup. She does wear lipstick and nail polish, but that's about it. And she has a very white face. But, like, it's the way she moves is what's really flattering. It's so funny. It's like, she moves as if she's dancing. It's like, she's like, you know, like that. It's basically like her hands are always in the air. Like, it doesn't matter what she's doing, it's always in the air, and it's absolutely fantastic. I love that. I just love the way she walks, because it really does feel like she's dancing. I think that's one of the things that Anne Hathaway chose to have for the character she was playing. And I also think it was also maybe the director's choice, Tim Burton. I mean, I don't know, but it's just the way she walks. It's like very graceful. Like, she can't harm anything. It's like, she's a great character. And when Alice is trying to unlock the chest containing the Vorpal sword, for some reason she like falls asleep. There's no explanation. She just does it. I mean, it could very well be the fact that she, like, you know, at the beginning of the time gap scene between young Alice and adult Alice, she says she's tired. She has been sleeping well, you know, the same nightmares all over again, you know, of Underland. And she falls asleep. And it's like, that could be it. Like, it could be that she was just tired, but, like, there's no real explanation. Maybe the wound was so bad that she just, like, passed out. I don't know. There's not really an explanation for it, but, like, she definitely sleeps. It doesn't make any sense. I was confused about that. Now, there was actually quite a funny scene where the Knave of Hearts is essentially, you know, presenting the Red Queen with all these bad news about how Alice escaped, you know, with the Bandersnatch and with the Vorpal Blade, and she just keeps slapping it, like, all this horrible news for the Red Queen about Alice's escape, and he just keeps adding to it, and it's like, oh, I hate that. No, I hate that too. I hate that. It's like, yeah, that was a real funny scene. I like that. Like, just like, yeah, I mean, it's just like, he keeps finding ways to make her mad. Fantastic. And the very end of the film was actually amazing. Like, oh my goodness, amazing. Obviously, Alice gets to go on an adventure on a boat, but, like, we actually find out that Wonderland is actually real. I mean, Wonderland is what you call it as a little girl, but it's actually Underland. But it turns out it's real because Absalom, the blue caterpillar, who is now a butterfly, she's been flying around, and that's proof that Wonderland actually existed, you know, in this movie. So, like, it wasn't in a dream. It was basically a memory, which is really interesting, but, like, still, I really like that. That was a really cool little thing for the end of the film. And like I said before, how the fact that the film has a lot of different actors who are from different nationalities. So in the original film, they had a lot of American actors playing the roles. Not every character was American, but there were quite a few. And then with this remake, because it's meant to be like a continuation of the original Alice story, they have a lot of British American actors. Some of them are actually Australian, like the actress who plays Alice herself is actually Australian. She just played the character with the British accent. It kind of makes sense. But like, yeah, Johnny Depp, Matt Lucas, Helena Bonham Carter, Anne Hathaway, Crispin Glover, Alan Rickman, Christopher Lee, Stephen Fry, Timothy Spall, and Lindsay Duncan. Those are most of them anyway. Like, oh my god, they had such good talent. Like, Alan Rickman was amazing as Absalom. They actually give the caterpillar a name in this one, although I think it probably just because that was what the original books called it. The original 1951 version did not even call him Absalom. It was just called the Blue Caterpillar. But also, Christopher Lee was amazing. Even though it was more like a cameo, it was still incredible. Like, his role in the film was obviously the Jabberwocky, and he was amazing. Like, he was absolutely incredible. He didn't have a lot of lines, but even then it was still amazing. Like, I was really, really impressed. Like, just his voice in general is just amazing. Obviously, R.I.P. to Christopher Lee, but at the same time, he was an incredible actor, just like Alan Rickman, and he'll never be forgotten, for sure. But with the actors, you have like Johnny Depp doing a British accent, mostly anyway, and Hathaway doing a British accent, Crispin Glover doing a British accent. You may recognize him from playing George McFly in the Back to the Future movies, at least the first two, but like, yeah, some great talent, some amazing talent. Now, there were quite a few nods to the original film and actually the original story too. So when Lady Ascot and Alice are walking through the garden, Lady Ascot is like, you know, she's horrified about the roses. Like, you know, her gardeners were supposed to plant red roses, not white roses. And Alice chimes in like, you know, you could always paint the roses red, which is a direct nod to the original film's actual song. There's actually a song, you know, called Painting Roses Red. I think it was actually part of the original story too, but like, yeah. Actually, that scene is actually recreated in the flashbacks with young Alice, which is really cool. It's a nice little Easter egg for that. And also, of course, real red roses are actually, you know, featured in the Red Queen's Garden, which is really, really nice. I liked it a lot. And when Alice returns to Wonderland for the first time since she was a little girl, one cool little nod from the original film was the rocking horse fly. Now, in that scene in the original film, there were all sorts of, you know, exotic creatures, and one of them was a rocking horse fly, and it does make an appearance. It's great, and honestly, it's fantastic. I mean, obviously there's like a dragonfly too, but like the rocking horse fly, it's like a it's really cool to see that, you know, especially, you know, in a modernized version of the film. It's fantastic. Now, the Red Queen's guards, I think they're called the Red Guards, they are actually redesigned versions of the Queen of Hearts guards, the guards that resemble playing cards from the original film. And also, I think probably the original story too, because at the end of the day, it's all based off the original story anyway. But it's still cool that they're like modernized versions of them. They're like, it's basically like they're wearing armor, and like the you know, their shoulders have like the little numbers that, you know, that coincide with the card number. It's just a really cool, you know, the fact that they're based off that is really, really cool. You know, just like a modernized version of it. It's really, really cool. And the Mad Hatter actually recites most of the Jabberwocky poem from the original story, actually, in his Scottish accent, because that's kind of like his mood thing. That's his like thing. He changes his accents quite frequently, and in the poem it actually mentions the mome rats, which are creatures that Alice actually encounters in the original film, and probably the original story too. But like, you know, we're focusing on the original film as well, mainly because that's what I remember most of anyway. But still, like, it's really cool that he does that, like, you know, just like recites the poem, not all of it, but most of it. And obviously that poem is actually part of the original story too. A big part of the plot is fighting the Jabberwocky, which is not part of the original film at all, for sure. Now, the king does not make an appearance in this film at all. However, he is like nodded to, like, he does make an appearance. Like, I mean, I guess he does, sort of. His head does. Let's say that. We are actually showing like what happened to the king. The king was beheaded by the Red Queen. The Red Queen, you know, it was under the Red Queen's orders to, you know, off his head kind of thing. And it's kind of like, you know, that dark twist, because Tim Burton directed the film, and he's known for his dark stories, his dark, especially his dark remakes. But like, yeah, it's very dark, and obviously the king was an original character. Although I'm probably thinking of more of the King of Hearts. Not the Queen of Hearts, the King of Hearts. It's probably the Red King then I'm thinking of, but still. He wasn't an original character as far as I know. And one of my favorite sequences from this remake is when Alice is talking to Absalom, the blue caterpillar, for the last time. We're actually shown little flashbacks from her time in Wonderland, as she had called it, as young Alice. And like I said earlier, oh my god, she's so cute. And like, we are giving quite a few of the scenes from the original story. Not all of them, but quite a few. Not all of them are from the original story, but like most of them are from the original film anyway. And it's just incredible. Like, that's probably my favorite aspect of the original film, because it turns out, as we all know, that it's all memory. It's all a place that she actually went. It wasn't a dream. It was all just a place that she went down a rabbit hole, and that's what you actually find out. Like, yeah, I really like that. That was a great part of the film. Just seeing her was incredible. And the whole "why is a raven like a writing desk" from the original film and story is mentioned quite a few times by the Mad Hatter, but we don't actually get a definitive answer to it, because it turns out the Mad Hatter does not know the answer to that. He just keeps asking the question, and I think Alice actually asks him once, and it's like, we never get an answer to it. I don't think it was ever actually meant to have an answer, but like, we never actually get one. Ever. It's like, it's wild, but it's still like a cool nod to the original story and the original film, because, you know, the Mad Hatter in the original film actually asked Alice that once, and it was just weird. And it was a very random question that made absolutely no sense. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this review, how Alice's father was, I'm pretty sure, in the original story, but not the original film. Actually, in the original film, the only family we got was Alice's sister, who, in my opinion, when I reviewed it last week, I said that she was more like her mother, but turns out she's actually her sister. She's a much older sister. Like, she's a big sister, like really big sister. But like, she looks like a mother, but at the same time, in this version of the film, we have her father, who it turns out is deceased, and then her mother, and then her sister, and that's it. Like, you know, she does have a family, and we actually get to see a lot more people in the film than we do in the original film, because in the original film, like, the only people in the real world we actually saw were Alice and her sister, and then Dinah. And Dinah never actually makes an appearance in this film. I was kind of hoping that they would have showed her, but like, it's just a cat. No big deal. Although, one of the promo images for the film, she's holding a bunny, so I don't know what that's about. But still, it was cool to see a lot more people in this remake. It was great. And the Mad Hatter actually has a much more prominent role in this film, whereas in the original film it was like 2 scenes and that was it. Plus, we actually get some backstory that he was actually Hatter to the White Coon, which is really interesting. That we actually get him, you know, as a younger version of himself, which is really cool, you know. And not only that, but we also, you know, have, you know, some of the flashbacks featuring young Alice and Mad Hatter, and he obviously hasn't aged. He has aged a little bit, but like, I mean, it's mainly just his hair, but like, still, it's cool we get some backstory, which is really cool. And last but not least, I have the changes that were made. So I mentioned that at the beginning of this review, how there was a lot of changes made to this remake. I mean, a lot. Probably more than any other film until like probably Dumbo came out. So the story was changed a lot. It more reflected on the original story, but it was also like meant to be a sequel to the original story. Meant to be focused on a 19-year-old version of Alice who returns to Wonderland, or Wonderland, because that's what the actual place is called, after 13 years. And you know, like the Jabberwocky plot, it's very different. Like, it's massively different. It's like nothing like the original at all. But it's really good. It's a really good change. I like what Tim Burton did with it. It's very new. And with that, the pacing is actually a lot different. Actually, there are things that happen in this version of the film that happen a lot differently than the original film. Things you wouldn't normally expect to happen, because it is a story set years after the original story. It's very different in its own way, and it's like, it really tells a much different story. But at the same time, it is a remake, and it's meant to, like, you know, show you, you know, some of the stuff from the classic story, but at the same time having a brand new story, which is incredible. Another change is the rabbit hole is actually, like, you know, in the tree, like, you know, as opposed to the original film where it was like, you know, part of the tree was like, you know, this ground level thing where it was the tree, but like it was at a different angle. It was like, you know, in the tree, like this way, but in the new one here we have it like under the tree. It's like, you know, right here instead of like here. It's really hard to explain, but at the same time, like they did change it a lot. But honestly, I kind of like the way they did the changes the tree in the new one, because the new one is what I remember most. The original, I didn't remember how she'd gotten to Wonderland in the first place. It was very different. They also had no talking door handle, which is interesting. That they have a door handle that just doesn't talk. The eat meat cookie is changed to a small cake, which is really interesting. I don't know why, but they decided to do that. Just a change they made. The Dormouse is also given a more prominent role, just like the Mad Hatter, where in the original film it was just like a Mad Mouse and a teapot. I think it was also voiced by an American actor, as in this one it's voiced by a British actor. You know, again, it's all because the original story was by a British author. It kind of makes sense. They also changed it to where this remake actually treats Alice as if she doesn't remember being in Wonderland at all. Like, it's all like, you know, just dreams and stuff. Because most of the characters, like, they seem to remember her, sort of. Well, I think the Blue Caterpillar has, like, you know, he has some kind of, I don't know, memory loss or something like that, where he can't remember her, but later on he does. It's weird, but, like, I feel like, you know, a lot of the characters do remember who she is, but at the same time, she's treated like she doesn't remember any of this, like, at all, which is just interesting. It's a very interesting way of telling an Alice story in live action, for sure. And like quite a few of the live action remakes we've gotten in the past, this is not a musical. There are absolutely no songs. There is quite a bit of music actually, but there's not actually any songs. No one actually singing in this film, which is kind of sad. But like at the same time, if there was singing in this film, it would basically be a carbon copy. But they didn't do that. It was absolutely no singing in this film, because it's Tim Burton. No one sings in Tim Burton films at all. Not even the birthday song. It's like, come on. You gotta have the birthday song. And like I said earlier, the Mad Hatter, played by Johnny Depp, mainly speaks with a British accent, but his mood can shift from time to time. So basically, what ends up happening is his skin can change, his accent can change, you know, specifically from British to Scottish, and also eye color can change too. Like it can go from green to yellow all the time, especially when he gets really angry. So it's all really about his mood. Really, I think the color on his face changes depending on what mood he's in, which is really, really cool. And the croquet game is a part of the film, but it's very different, as it's actually only played by the Red Queen and her audience of basically freaks. But it's all part of the original film and the original story, which is really, really good. So I liked it a lot. That was really good. Also, in order to get into the Red Queen's castle, Alice, who actually is someone that the Red Queen actually knew as a little girl, you know, has to, like, use a different alias. She goes by from Umbridge. It's so weird. It's actually a name that the White Rabbit says, like, he's trying to think of something and he just says and it works, I guess. It just kind of sticks. It's very strange, but yeah. That's pretty much all I can say about the changes that were made to this version of the story. It's a very different film, very different than any other film I've seen in the past. Like, it's so different. Like, not a lot of Disney remakes actually changed the story so much that it's hardly recognizable. Dumbo did a very good job at making it different. That's why I like that remake a lot, because it was so different. This one just changes the story completely. Well, portraying a lot of the elements from the original film and the original story. It just changes so much to it. They added so much to it. It's like, you look at the original film and then you look at this one, there's a big difference. Like, it's so different. There are a lot of characters that were in this film that were in the original film. It's like, yeah, it's very different. But at the same time, it's told from a different perspective. You know, a Alice that is a lot older, has matured, you know, knows everything, but seems to have trouble knowing what Wonderland is, apparently. Like, he doesn't understand, but at the same time, it's fantastic. And also, that final battle is amazing. Like, her battle with the Jabberwocky is, wow, I loved it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about Alice in Wonderland from 2010. It's a phenomenal film. I really, really enjoyed it. The music is amazing. The acting is incredible. Everything about it, the visual effects are great. Everything. It's absolutely amazing. It's not the greatest Disney adaptation, but it's still a really, really good one. I really, really enjoyed it. So that's pretty much what I'm going to say about the film. I'm going to give this remake a, I don't know, 9 out of 10. It wasn't perfect, but at the same time, it was really, really good. I think it was just so different. Like, it was so different that it wasn't as memorable as the original film was. So I'm gonna give it 9 out of 10. Not a perfect score, but at the same time, I really, really liked it. So yeah, next week I'll be reviewing Alice Through the Looking Glass, which is the sequel to this one. It did not receive well, apparently, but I guess I'll be the judge of that and to see what I thought of it overall. So tune in next week for that one. But that is gonna do it for this episode reviewed, and that's all that I'm going to say. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Reviewed. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like button. I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to this channel, subscribe for more episodes of this series. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my second channel where I do reaction videos. The link will be in the description. Also, make sure to click that bell to enable alerts so you don't miss any of my uploads. And I'll be back next week with another episode. Alright? See ya.